When the daylight pierced through the branches, we understood. We were standing before God. Motherland, bless your children who are about to die. Beyond my sword and behind my shield, I smile. Because against all odds, I will triumph. The above words are paired with images of an Armageddon in progress, the final stand of pockets of humanity, quick reaction forces, knights in shining armor for stranded bastions of civilization. The poetics and supernatural cosmic imagery here, taken from the game's reveal trailer, not only hint at a deeper meaning and subtext to its mysterious universe, but also serve a more straightforward purpose, describing the core aesthetics of a criminally underrated subgenre. Humanity's most fundamental constant is struggle against our Earth, against forces which outweigh us 1,000,000 to 1, and of course, inevitably, against each other. When faced with an apocalypse at the hands of godlike entities, sometimes the best response is still to pick up an M4. Here you are on the edge of the Creator, an anthem of heroes and tears. This is Beautiful Light. When I choose to talk about a game for a video, it's usually one that I either think deserves more attention or is still relatively unknown. This time was a bit different. Beautiful Light has been in development for several years now, basically by one person, Iris. At one point, a professional Rainbow Six Siege player, he began working on Beautiful Light sometime in 2019 as part of his master's thesis, and now heads the 8 to 20 person development team at Deep Worlds, the indie cohort now fully developing the game for the last year or so. What instantaneously struck me about Deep Worlds was their honesty. This was a team comprised largely of people without industry experience. They were not only open about this, but encouraged me to say anything, positive or negative, about their project with zero intervention on their part. This level of transparency that Deep Worlds are comfortable with is unprecedented. Iris streams active development of the game on Twitch, shares content updates, work in progress shots and videos in social media and Discord. It's both an admirable and risky move. When it was first shown publicly in spring of 2023, I instantly connected with its world, its vision. I also recognized that diving into the game too early in its development would spoil the surprise for when it truly resembled itself in the way that the devs wanted. So I waited and waited. And waiting seems to have been the right call. As the game continued development over 2023, I had gathered from other people's impressions that it was basically a modern hunt showdown, a PvP extraction shooter with a singular bounty objective and AI-controlled monsters, but with automatic weapons instead of Hunt's turn-of-the-century arsenal. Now, having sat down with the devs and gotten a full rundown of the game's plans, it's fascinating how wrong I actually was. When I first saw footage of the game, I was immediately reminded of the SCP Foundation-inspired short films of Evan Royalty, Dollhouse, and Overlord. These still stand, in my opinion, as perfect depictions of the aforementioned and criminally underrated subgenre, tactical operators versus indescribable eldritch horrors. They were also, according to Iris, the literal inspiration for Beautiful Light in the first place. In SCP's fan-driven lore, the Foundation secures and contains anomalous entities of various danger levels to protect the normal people of society. It's a thematic thread that often arises in mid-apocalyptic fiction, a cordoned location within which events with global ramifications may be taking place, but which is shrouded from the rest of the world. A fenced-off region where only the desperate, brave, or amoral find themselves. The Zone in Roadside Picnic or in Stalker, Raccoon City in Resident Evil, the infested regions of Bayou in Hunt Showdown, anomalous locations in the SCP universe. In all these examples, the world outside the certain zone is relatively normal. In Beautiful Light, the opposite is the case. In Beautiful Light's universe, a catastrophic cosmic event took place simultaneously sometime in the 1960s in several places on Earth, eventually stranding all of these little pockets of humanity. The majority of the Earth is now covered with anomalies, demonic creatures which chillingly may be the remnants of prior human life, echoes, strange instances of warped reality sprinkled across the landscape, and artifacts, mysterious objects holding massive energy which were at some point the subject of study of the mysterious organization Arena. Over the decades since the world's collapse, events took place which shaped humanity's reality in the modern day, events that we as players are going to relive. Inspired, strangely enough, by the 2001 film Final Fantasy: The Spirits Within, directed by Sakaguchi Hironobu, the global population now live within walled cities scattered across the globe, pockets of humanity stranded from each other, surrounded by an Earth that exists in some halfway point between realities. I keep using that word purposefully, by the way. Death Stranding's influence on Beautiful Light is clearly felt. A strange, beautiful, and desolate Earth, permanently altered beyond human understanding, but just familiar enough to venture out into for a time. Political necessity of survival has led each walled city to react slightly differently. Factions arise, each with their own goals, intentions, and unique aesthetics. The cities and their respective governments interact with the world and the artifacts as resources, similarly to the great houses and guilds of the Dune universe interacting with spice. The devs explained to me that the infill and exfil helicopters are handled by a single apolitical faction, similarly to how the Spacing Guild completely controls interstellar travel in the Dune universe. Those who operate outside the city's walls are QRF, Quick Reaction Forces. Similar to the Scout Regiment in Attack on Titan, these contractors are held in high esteem by their society as they are basically living martyrs for their given motherland. They venture out with various objectives, and each time, less of them return. When an operator signs on to a QRF contract, their clock is now ticking. QRF are never expected to live long. In Beautiful Light, this is you. When an artifact discharges, sensor arrays detect the energy spikes and QRF teams are dispatched to locate and retrieve. Clearly inspired by the mobile task forces of the SCP Foundation's lore, QRF are a designation, not a faction. Each city sends out their own QRF teams, each with the same goals, meaning that when they meet, they may clash. Each QRF operator is a unique individual, with his or her own unique history. An RPG-like character sheet means that your character's origins and reasons for being here influence their strengths in-game. Alongside a robust customization system, it means your QRF operator will truly be their own person. Each city's representative faction have approached the global system slightly differently, meaning unique factions with their own proprietary gear and aesthetics, which will eventually come with unique gameplay opportunities. It's a level of depth and control over the player character that I didn't expect, and there are elements that are even deeper and more surprising, but no matter who you are, no matter the point in history or the geographical location, as QRF, you're headed out into the unknown with one single purpose. Forces in squads of 3 will infill at a random point of interest in Ground Zero, an abandoned military and scientific installation somewhere in Poland. Operators will need to search a designated area for a laptop. They'll then need to enter the correct code on the laptop to find an administrator's username and password in order to print a keycard for one of several bunker entrances. Once inside the facility, they'll need to access a terminal in the artifact room, find the correct information allowing them to power cycle the containment mechanism, and retrieve the single artifact. Once they hold it, they will need to call for extraction, board the helicopter when it arrives, and escape unharmed. That's the gist of Ground Zero, and every map in the game will have a completely different core loop, and take place at different points in the alternate timeline of the Beautiful Light universe. Teams are expected to clash with human resistance 3 possible times during a match: at the first compound containing the search for the laptop, at the artifact bunker, and at the final POI of helicopter extraction. The location of the initial PCs is dynamic, and the extraction point cannot be chosen by the players. It's predetermined at one of many POIs, and the location will only be visible to the team holding the artifact. Echoes will appear randomly across the map, changing a QRF team's possible path through Ground Zero. Weather and time of day may affect the best possible routes as well. Radiation, a planned mechanic, will of course affect your traversal, and artifact discharges may send all humans running for any covered structure. Of course, throughout all of this, anomalies will be roaming and searching for human prey, both swarms of reavers, blind but sound-sensitive anomalies who act more as sound traps than anything, and far more dangerous beasts like the player-controlled Juggernaut. When I asked the devs about their core driving vision for Beautiful Light, their answer was immersion and tone. At face value, the effort towards that vision is obvious. The game's visual and audio design in every way brings the player into its cold, uncanny, and ruthless alternate universe, and while it does this with clear direction and striking tonal specificity, the gameplay I've described up till now is a conglomerate of largely familiar mechanics. It's in the next element that I personally think Beautiful Light has groundbreaking potential to push the boundaries of the genre, in a way I'm honestly not sure people are ready for. Coding or hacking, an activity players can engage with at any of the arena terminals scattered around the map, is an element of Beautiful Light that goes beyond the aesthetic. It's an adjacent gameplay element to movement and shooting in a way no PvP shooter has ever remotely attempted. Every terminal in Beautiful Light works by completely realistic command line coding rules. Commands which should work in a real Unix shell will work on the in-game terminals. Basic commands needed to progress the map, how to search for usernames, passwords, or files, for example, will be given to the player on a help screen. But other commands, such as how to bypass the initial search function and instantly find admin login and passwords, will work just as any Unix coder would expect they would, and the game will never outright say what is or isn't possible. Iris, obviously an experienced coder himself, walked me through how, if I wanted, I could search for all the live electronic devices connected to the network, find the IP address of a certain electrical circuit, and power on or off a room in a different part of the building. That same circuit would be physically accessible at a breaker box somewhere on the map, but again, say I was a player who actually knew how to code, I could control and power on or off any number of things connected to the building systems from any PC, specific lights, entire circuits, maybe even access cameras or other terminals. Say it's night and my team, equipped with night vision goggles, wanted to push an aggressive route into the main arena facility. We could, through a terminal, remotely kill power to a certain side of the building, giving ourselves an advantage there. The devs told me that potentially a player able to solve actual hacking puzzles could access other QRF players' PDAs and triangulate their location, and that legitimately difficult hacking puzzles requiring coding proficiency might later reveal Easter eggs or unlock specific content in the game. BP Player State C Foundation PDA. Is this us? Who are these people?
Yeah, it's us.
Okay.
Basically, this is something you can try when you are not sure some people are around. Basically, if there's someone near the...
So if I hit scan, it'll actually tell me nearby IPs of like other PDAs, is that what that is?
Yeah, exactly.
Wow, that's pretty cool. I like that. The depth to these mechanics was honestly at first extremely off-putting to me. The idea that players who were skilled at Linux would have an actual in-game advantage over me, someone who didn't even own a computer 3 years ago, it felt a little bit absurd. This was an extraction FPS, I thought, not Cicada 3301. But the hacking mechanics are a push and pull in the game's overall loop. Players on a terminal are not only audible to others around them. I got somebody on the computer, you guys.
Okay.
Somebody typing on the computer just now. But they're, of course, completely unable to move. Like a team in a squad with a good sniper, a QRF squad's designated hacker is now completely unable to assist their team in combat, other than with information. Knowing that Iris came from a background in Rainbow Six makes sense from this perspective. Hacking effectively in Beautiful Light will be advantageous in the way that a skilled defense player in Rainbow Six uses cameras, albeit with a much higher barrier to entry. But the advantage in PvP one will gain from being skilled at in-game coding will likely be marginal. It'll provide options and control over your situation, but more importantly, this is where the player will have direct line into the deeper parts of Beautiful Light's world. Who is Arena? Why are all the QRF PDAs tracked on this same network? What are artifacts and why are they here? What were they being studied for? Who were these usernames we're logging in as? Answers to any of these questions might be found encrypted somewhere in here, and quests will ask us to dig deeper than the core gameplay loop requires. Deep World's hope is that players will actually learn a bit about command line to progress further in-game, or barring that, they connect with someone who knows what they're doing. But as intriguing as clacking away in the terminals is, you can never outstay your welcome, especially since opposing human forces might be the least of your concerns. Two variants of Player Anomaly are planned as of this writing, the Wendigo, name subject to change, and the Juggernaut, which I had the privilege of running around a bit as, and both will play completely differently. The gameplay that you'll see of the former is utterly work in progress, but it's small, relatively weak, and extremely agile due to its ability to jump and grab walls and surfaces. It can swing around between trees and generally skitter about outside players' reach. Think the skulk in Natural Selection or the subject in The Hidden. The Juggernaut is basically a big dog. It's fast and meaty, it'll be able to bite and slash, of course, spit venom at things, lay traps for the QRF to avoid, and let out a great beastly roar that will create an area of effect status of panic for operators, during which they'll fumble their weapon animation slightly. There has been a bit of confusion about the relationship between Anomaly and Operator players. As I hope the rest of this video has made clear, while yes, it's an asymmetrical PvP game, this game isn't like Evolve or Dead by Daylight, where humans are staked against the monsters. The QRF operators are primarily hunting each other and the artifact, of course, and the goal of an Anomaly player is basically to just be a psychopath, kill anything and everything you see without any real win condition. Later on, there will be a full progression and ability system for Anomaly players alongside progression for your operator, but as for early access release, the progression you earn from Anomaly gameplay will be transferred to your operator. A sort of scav run, if you will, a way to bolster your character on the side. The real reward comes from when you complete the loop the game is centered around. When looking at the design of an extraction shooter like this, a few whys come into question. Why do this or that? Why is this here? Why was this designed this way? And answers to some of these are obvious, but others are less so, and answering all of them is important to understand why a game will or won't work, and what kind of game it actually is. For loot-based extraction shooters, Tarkov, Marauders, Arena Breakout, Delta Force, and others, every individual piece of loot has varying value which players are incentivized to extract with for obvious reasons. Being first to a high-value location provides advantage through map control, but disadvantage through risk. Carry the loot to extraction, and you set yourself up for ambush along the way. For an objective-based extraction shooter like Beautiful Light or the model Hunt Showdown, there is one single coveted objective all players need to extract with that they're going to need to fight over. In a game like this, being first carries far greater risk, so it must come with some sort of reward. Hunt's solution to the camping problem was enhanced dark sight. The mechanic hunters they use to find the bounty gives them 5 total seconds of wall hacks once they're holding it. Beautiful Light takes a similar but a little bit of a more nuanced approach. This is all subject to change, of course, but the plan is for artifact holders to be able to radar scan other players on their map, like in Hunt, but they also might be able to be invisible to anomalies, meaning that map traversal will be far easier for them than it will be for anybody else. As mentioned earlier, artifact holders will be the only team able to see the extraction location and then call the helicopter, so while players hunting them may know where the artifact is, they'll have to extrapolate from the holder's movement where they're headed rather than being able to cut them off and camp the extract for an easy win. In my experience, it's one of the tensest moments in the round. Once a team grabs the artifact, they are at both a massive advantage and carry massive risk. They're visible to everyone on the map, a map which is harder to traverse when you're panicking to chase down the game's only win condition. Dynamic and cinematic gameplay was important to Deep Worlds here. Rather than extract campers and battles in some random section of forest, they wanted that final fight for extraction to be immersive every time, hence why it's a randomly chosen POI location, akin to the randomly selected boss layers in Hunt Showdown. From talking to them about Ground Zero though, it also seems that they are abundantly aware that this gameplay loop can and will get stale. Ground Zero is just the first map in Beautiful Light, and every map will center around its own unique loop, curated layout, time period, and setting. One of the next maps I'm told is at an Arctic research station, and its layout and aesthetics will be completely different. In one of the maps, teams can start the match already carrying the artifact from the prior round with the goal of doubling it and then extracting, and other players can have the goal of then stealing it from them. Another map will take place after one of the walled cities is breached in a tight urban downtown environment, and the goal of the player on this map will be different once again. Rather than several similar arenas for the same gameplay loop, think of every map as an operation, an anecdote from the story, a mission. Missions which will always inherently involve PvP and the final goal of extraction. The scope and vision is honestly immensely complex, and to be honest, I have to ask myself, is any of this really possible? Looking at the gaming industry, much of what we're seeing now is recycled mechanics, IPs, and ideas. The room for creativity and boundary pushing has become cramped amidst a system fundamentally incapable of risking anything less than massive financial growth at all costs. And yet, it isn't working. Massively funded trend-chasing games are falling flatter than ever before, and the golden age of modern gaming, the boundary pushing of the 2000s to 2010s, is being yearned for by many. People like me, people like Iris and Mooney and Mata from Deep Worlds who I spoke to, people who connect with the game for its intrigue, for its soul and creativity, not for its player count or how many people watch it on Twitch or YouTube. It's why Beautiful Light has, in a way, been developed in such a freeform way, a way that the devs know is haphazard, strange, that's focused more on trying things than on perfecting what's already been done to death. The transparency under which Beautiful Light has been developed wasn't solely to just gain trust and connection with the game's potential fans, making sure they're abundantly aware of how far along the game is, how it'll be monetized, and when. It's also a personal motivator, according to Iris. Forcing themselves to work in the public eye keeps them in check, allows for communication and feedback with like-minded individuals, encourages them to try harder, and, in a way, it operates as sort of a test. The urge which pushed them to include fully simulated command line coding in the in-game laptops, it's the same urge which pushed them to share every aspect of development along the way. It was a crazy idea, it was different from what other people were doing, and so they had to do it. If this conversation sounds familiar, it's the exact same sentiment shared to me by the industry vets at Fundog Studios making the Forever Winter. That this yearning for innovation and risk-taking is coming from everyone, from people with decades of AAA experience to those with none, from fans to viewers to artists. It proves to me that the tide is turning to some degree. Beautiful Light and games like it are similar to the fantasy of being QRF, knowing that the cards are stacked against me to an imperceptible degree, yet loading a mag and staring death in the eyes anyway. Beautiful Light exists because of passion and necessity, that feeling that if no one else does this, no one ever will. The world it exists in is cutthroat. The potential for its failure increases with every strange and boundary-pushing idea that it brings forward. But to me, that's exactly what makes it so exciting. For the people who always dreamed of a multiplayer PvP stalker game, for the people who still remember their first steps as a stranded PMC in the Norvinsk Special Economic Zone, for those who love the fear they felt hearing footsteps in the mud in the bayou, for those who hear the sirens of an incoming atmospheric anomaly and run towards the source rather than away from it, for those who love being lost in awe at the strangeness of the world, Beautiful Light is trying to bring all of that home the best that it can. And maybe, against all odds, it'll triumph. I'm Rilo. I like to talk about things that I think are cool. Subscribe for more like this, and I will see you next time.